Hello, I wanted to show you a quick way to do thumbnails inside of Adobe Illustrator. So in the previous video, I did a Loom video that discussed different types of thumbnails, the different levels of detail. Some had a very immediate quality to them, very, very sketchy, very, just understanding the relationship between elements. Some are done with pen and paper or pencil and paper. Others are done with software. Some students will use Photoshop even though their project is being done in Illustrator. Other students will use things like Draw or tablet-based programs to go ahead and do those sorts of things. And there's more than one option. And I just want to share with you one way to do them in Adobe Illustrator. So we're going to go ahead and start out in Adobe Illustrator. First thing we're going to do is we're going to click on Create New to create a new document. And you can do any size document. Some students will elect to do very small documents, so 1 by 2 inches or 2 by 3 inches, as long as the document matches the format for your finished product. What I mean by that is if you're working with a rectangle, use a rectangular layout. If you're working with a square, use a square-shaped layout. For us, I'm going to do just a rectangular layout for our hypothetical scenario here. We're going to say that we're doing a Disney style artwork or a Looney Tune style artwork, something with a variegated line weight cover for our product in this learning situation. So I'm going to go ahead and click this. I'm going to click Create. And you see we have just a typical artboard here. Now, the way that I'm going to recommend you doing thumbnails if you want to do them in Illustrator is to go ahead and create an entire Illustrator document that you can turn in and just label it thumbnails for project. You can make as many as you need, and since we're working out compositional details with these thumbnails versus drawing decisions, usually 5 to 10, 10's a good amount. I'm going to do that. So I'm going to create 10 artboards by just clicking on the artboard palette here. You'll see the artboard palette looks like 2 rectangles. And adding, using the dog ear icon here, new artboards. I'm not even going to really rename mine. You can rename them by clicking and changing the name for that particular board. I'm just going to go ahead and create 10 artboards. And one more, 10. So you see I have the 10 artboards. If I scroll through the window, you can see that they're all in a row. And that's absolutely fine. You can change the layout by clicking on this icon, the far left lower portion of your artboards palette that says rearrange the artboards. And in my case, I think I want to do them in rows and columns. So I'm going to do 3 rows of 3 columns. I'm happy with just what we have here, but you can certainly make revisions to that for your particular set of thumbnails. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And you'll see now I have 10 artboards there arranged in 3 columns, 3 rows with 1 extra board out there. So let's go about making some thumbnails. I used Illustrator artwork for my particular thumbnail. You guys can, of course, do whatever you feel you would like to do. You can use a pressure-sensitive tablet to work with Draw or with Illustrator or with any of the other Adobe Suite programs. But I'm going to go ahead and use Adobe Illustrator artwork on this. So I've already taken the liberty of doing some. I'm going to go ahead and paste it in here. You see this is a Disney artwork that we're doing just for this exercise. It's licensed and royalties all go to Disney. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of position Mickey here for this particular one, and maybe I want to experiment with a little bit of type. I'm going to go ahead up here and type Mickey Mouse. Ooh. And maybe I want to use some type effects on this, so I'll come over to Effects and I'll come down to, let's see, we'll do Warp, and maybe I'll do Arch type effect on this for Mickey Mouse, and I can make that type bigger. I'll grab this type and still have that lowercase either. We can see how that looks. So that's the basic idea of it. Maybe for my second one, I want to do the art much bigger. I've already isolated that I want to do Mickey Mouse. And in order to fit Mickey onto a page, I can draw a shape here on the page. And I'll make that shape no stroke, no fill. And I'll change the drawing mode on this one. So I'm going to change the drawing mode to draw inside. And I will paste Mickey inside there. Now I'm going to play around with the scaling on this. I want it to be a close-up of Mickey for this. Oops. Maybe a little bit different there. And I can move it down so we see the upper part of Mickey. And I can go in with some type. Maybe up here, high right. It's Mickey. And we'll make that a bolder type. Play around with some settings here. I'll still go back into my effects and I'll use the warp again. Maybe this time around I'll use the arc effect. Oh, that's what I used last time. Let's use something different. I'm going to use the lower arc effect, and instead of having it bend in this direction, I'm going to have it bend upward, kind of like this, kind of like that. So then I'm going to play around with this to make the scale a little bit bigger. Maybe tip it just slightly. Bring it in a little bit there. There we go. That's my second thumbnail. And for the third one is going to be the last one I'm going to demonstrate because I think you get the idea. And I'm going to paste it over here in a regular drawing mode. And maybe make Mickey a little bit bigger, make the character a little bit bigger. Okay. And I'm going to play around with some of the puppet warp functions on this. Now, puppet warp is manipulating licensed character art, so it's really not necessarily a good idea. But what I can get is an inference of how a different pose would look. So I could work with a different character sheet or one of their style guide art sheets and get something that had the different pose and integrate that into my piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the puppet warp. And if you've never used that before, it's the one that looks like a push pin here. It's kind of hidden beneath the free transform tool. And we can pin to isolate an area, and then we can work with the warp. Now by default, the pin is where you pop it. I'm going to isolate the head area here. And you can see that's what this looks like. I can move this to do distortion on the artwork. And you'll notice these points popped up at various locations on the artwork. I'm going to try moving this arm down a little bit, so it's more of a pure horizontal sort of a pose. I'm going to tip the head slightly and then maybe pull the body back a little bit. Once I do that, I'm also going to play a little bit with scale. So 3 really quick ideas to share with you for working with thumbnails. I'm going to zoom back so that you can see the thumbnails that I have thus far. Now, when I'm ready to turn these thumbnails in to my instructor for grading, what I can do is I can just save this document as an Illustrator file, call it thumbnails, and that's fine. Or what I could do is just do a screenshot of this as well. I would get the Artboards palette here out of the way. I would hit the screenshot command key for your particular platform, whether you're working on Windows or Mac. You could take a screenshot of these and you could put it in there. Of course, you are not limited to the artwork that you've drawn or traced. You can work with geometric shapes even, or brushes here to kind of come in and have a very loose, and I only have a mouse to do variations as well. Remember, we just need to see what the main attribute is of the artwork and check the relationships to see how things are interacting in the page. And that's a real quick way to do Illustrator thumbnails.